Okay, I had a question during a flight instructor session about how would I change my commander build out, or how would I change my loadout in general for tier 6 clan battles. And I did a video on tier 6 CV ranking, or at least kind of discussing what the highlights, strengths, etc. were. I did a video about the concept of 2 carriers allowed in clan battles and what could that mean. Kind of riffing, on it, not necessarily solving it, but riffing about it. But in terms of commander builds, I don't think I've done one for that, and I did it for the tier 10 season, so let's kind of dive into that a bit. Realistically, there's going to be 2 primary contenders for what's in the clan battle season. There's going to be the Reusable, because the Reusable has excellent concealment, going down to 9.6, and once the patch drops, the ability to bring it down even further with Hidden Menace. And then we've got, by the way, I need to change this captain. There we go. And then, other than that, you have the Lowenhart, whose detection is not nearly as good, but it's not as bad as, say, the Ranger, by a slight margin at least, and certainly not the Arc Royal, which I think I have Hidden Menace on. Nope, it's back to 14. So, you have a little bit of a detection problem. However, the AP rockets are extremely good, especially if you have the chance to strike into a cruiser that's not in smoke. That's going to be a bit conditional. And then the HE bombs will be excellent for trying to deal with destroyers, possibly nail battleships, and also possibly CV snipe. In general, I think the Reusable is going to be the more popular pick. But let's kind of dive into what commander builds are possible here. So let's look at a commander that has not had any CV stuff on it. So first and foremost, the basic 9-point build, more planes is better. Why? Because you're going to lose planes. You're going to need every plane you can get. And even though this is only going to translate into 1 plane over the course of the match, it means that you're going to have access to the resources a little bit faster. So that's the difference between taking off with 3 planes when you're like in the thick of it and taking off with 2. Is it a big difference? No, but it's something. More speed. This is always huge. It might look like it's only 2.5%, but you fly everywhere you go, so this always matters, always. And then additional armor, additional health. You have to do this. This is not optional. Outside of this, if you're going with a 21-point commander, where would you start to put the points? Now, in the tier 10 season, fighters were really part of the thought process, because the tier 10 fighter consumable is going to have 7 planes, 7 fighters in it, which is a significant amount of damage to an incoming CV, especially if that CV is trying to do something. However, at tier 6, a fighter consumable only has 3 planes, which is much less. Against a Lowenhart, that's actually pretty significant. Lowenhart only has 9 planes of each type at the most, so that's potentially an entire third of its inventory, just killing 3 planes. And against a Lowenhart, that's not going to be a joke. Against a Reusable, not as much. Reusable regens faster and has more planes available to it. So losing 3 planes is much more survivable. Similar stuff that's affected by fighters is going to be the Furious. However, the Ranger, the Visser, and the Arc Royal are going to be similar to the Reusable in that they're going to be more fighter resistant because they just have more resources available. So if you're thinking about speccing into this tree, think hard. Realistically, the 2-point skill for an additional fighter consumable, I think, is probably a must. Why? There might be a CV snipe. You might have people trying to come over and kill your carrier. Having fighters is going to at least, give you more protection than the base 4 defensive fighters that you've got, on your hull. Also, you've got people that are going to attack your teammates. This gives you more ability to support, but it also gives you more ability to spot. So I absolutely agree with having, 12 fighters as opposed to 9, just because it gives you more versatility across the length of the match. Enhanced reactions could be interesting if you end up finding that Arc Royal has taken a significant place in the meta because they're extremely slow planes. If the Ranger starts to assert itself in the meta because their strike planes are also fairly slow, you might be able to do some drops where you're able to trap the planes, kind of similar to what you could do with an FDR. But Reusable planes will be fast, Lowenhart planes will be fast. I think this is unlikely to be the play with the 4 points, but it's definitely something that you might consider. If you do, you need to pair it with patrol or search and destroy. Having the patrol range is going to be very significant because the fighters at the lower tiers have smaller patrol ranges as they have less planes, and you need that patrol area, to have an interaction with the enemy for enhanced reactions to matter at all. So if you're going down this route, this is a 5-point route. Interceptor would be something you would talk about with your team. It would give you more patrol radius, but it means your planes cannot, or your patrol fighters cannot spot anymore. So this would definitely be something you need to have a conversation with for your team if you wanted to go that route, but realistically, you probably don't. So maybe the 5 points, maybe not. That's something to keep on the table. In terms of what other options are there? For the Reusable, absolutely going to be torps. You will be throwing torps on battleships. You'll be throwing torps on cruisers. Cruisers at tier 6 aren't going to have significant amounts of anti-torpedo protection, but it's going to be there. So that means more damage is going to get through. And I think it was confirmed by Wargaming that reducing torpedo protection increases flood chance. That might be by 0.5%, or maybe 1%, but that's like the equivalent of, well, a fire flag, right? Only in a flooding area. So theoretically, it's more damage and slightly more flood chance. So that's absolutely going to be a thing that you could think about. In terms of Flack, normally in a tier 6 situation, I would not recommend this. However, for the Lowenhart, with your resources being frankly limited, you may actually want to consider enhanced aircraft armor. It's very likely we see Huang-Heis. Huang-Heis have AA, which does not suck. They're going to fire a fair amount of flak, and it's not going to be one ship, it's going to be 2. Potentially, if there's a destroyer or a battleship there, that might be even 3 ships worth of flak coming at you, which means in a tier 6 CV, you're going to be looking at 6 to 10 flak puffs, depending. If you definitely trip on flak, or if you have any flak interactions, this 4 points probably going to be something you want to look into. If the enemy's not using defensive fire, then the hitting flak is survivable, and this will keep more health on your side. But if you feel very confident in your ability to dodge flak, maybe you choose not to. This is an optional, kind of like the planes are. Secondaries, never. Hidden Menace, maybe. The problem with Hidden Menace is while it's going to allow you to position more aggressively, and in the Lowenhart, that might actually be a very good thing, because the base plane speed is pretty high, so the planes will come back in hopefully a timely manner. In terms of using it on the Reusable, maybe. It depends how aggressively you position. But if you're forced off into a far position, maybe the meta changes and we're on the Ranger or something, or the Ark Royal, Hidden Menace is not going to be viable on the slower torpedoes, the slower bombs, or all of the Ark Royal planes, as they're just going to limp back very slowly. You will literally have to go through 2 entire different squadrons to get to a 3rd squadron before the 1st squadron might start to come back to cycle your stuff. So that's okay, but it could be limiting. If you're going to take Hidden Menace, you need to take it for one of 2 reasons. One is the maps are so small that you could get pinned against the wall and murdered because you have nowhere to run. That's option A. Or option B is you actually do plan to position very aggressively, and you can get a Reusable all the way down to something like 8.6 surface detection, 5.6 aerial detection, something very small. I think its AA actually outranges the detection on it. So in situations like that, you could conceivably move up with the group and even put the Reusable in the smoke with them if you feel confident in your ability to control the ship while doing that. In terms of extra fire chance, it's not going to be that big of a deal. At most, the Ranger drops 3 bombs. The only reason to take Demolition Expert would be the Ark Royal, as it drops a lot, or maybe if Furious ends up seeing play. Some people do really like the Furious, and she's a strong contender at the tier, but she's not super consistent with damage applications. Basically, your reticles are a little too big. So the rockets miss, the bombs miss, but Ark Royal or Furious would definitely look for Demolition Expert. Maybe the Ranger. Outside of that, I enjoy having it on the Lowenhart and randoms, but those 3 points may not be points that you have if you're maybe putting points into fighters or definitely into flak protection. Still, it's a nice thing to have, especially if your team is asking you to find damage opportunities and pull something out from there. Additional AP damage, this is in general a waste of points. However, if you're on the Visser, there's like nowhere else to put them outside of fighters. So if you happen to have points left over on the Visser, I could recommend this. On the Lowenhart, I cannot. Bomb speed might be interesting for the Reusable, the Lowenhart, and probably just that. Maybe the Ranger I don't know. This is a niche talent. I don't think this is going to be the difference between life or death. And with so many point possibilities, especially with the possibility of the fighter tree, I don't know if you go with this. Maybe on the outside with a Lowenhart pick, if you're attempting to strike into something and get back out again and save as many planes as possible. In terms of getting torpedo aiming or speed talents, I personally find this to be a waste. You may be torping smoke clouds, in which case you might want Swift Fish just to have your torpedoes move a little faster, maybe catch somebody unaware. Sight Stab is probably unnecessary for tier 6. The secondaries are terrible. Having an additional fighter may not be a joke, and the only way I would recommend this is after the first week or two of clan battles, if you find that your CV has been sniped over and over and over again, well, instead of having 3 or 4 planes, have 4 or 5. That makes it a little more resource intensive for the enemy CV to snipe you. So I could recommend that. And then obviously engine builds are, they just are what they are. Having more engine in general, I think is going to be pretty amazing. So let's take the time to look at what a Reusable build is, what a Lowenhart build is. So we've got our base 9 points for the Reusable. We would take additional torpedo throughput. That leaves us with 8 points left. I might actually go with additional flak resistance, because while I have plenty of planes on the Reusable, frankly, losing them sucks. Some additional fighters, which is going to give me some versatility there, and while I could have additional speed, I think I would probably prefer more boost, which would leave me with 1 additional point left. I'm probably not going to get much out of last gasp. This might help against the CV snipe. This might help in general just for patrol radius if I'm using it defensively. Also against a CV snipe, probably look like something like this or like this. One of those 2 options. Could I change this? Sure. I could pull out some of the fighters, which means I'm pulling some of the utility from my team and drop it into sight stab or maybe torpedo talents. But realistically, my Reusable build would likely look like this, unless I decided to go for enhanced reactions, in which case I might move enhanced armor over or something, and then try to slip that last point into patrol. All right, for the Lowenhart would probably look more like, again, I'm going to go with the additional fighter. I just find the utility to be too strong. I think the torpedoes on the Lowenhart are really not special, and I personally dislike the idea of buffing them. I think the planes are fast enough that I wouldn't worry too much about Flack, both for the rocket planes, which are extremely maneuverable, and the bombers, which are also quite maneuverable. I might actually end up going with the recommended of additional bomber speed and additional fire chance for interacting with battleships, as well as potentially cruisers that are in the open and spotted. That would leave me with 3 points, meaning I don't think I would care about torpedo talents. None of this is interesting. I would probably end up going with last gasp, additional engine boost, because these work well on the Lowenhart, as well as engine boost is amazing in general. And then with the last point, I would either go with some additional patrol range in the event that I might have to protect somebody, or perhaps the 1 additional fighter if I am dealing with consistent CV sniping. If I had to work enhanced reactions into the build, I would probably drop Demolition Expert and be able to move the points over there and just leave the single pointer off. Or actually, in that case, I might take last gasp and move it over to patrol range if I needed enhanced reactions in there. So this would probably be a Lowenhart build. In terms of the other, we'll see if we'll get there, but this is probably a starting place for the season. And of course, as we go across the season, we'll find out. Will double battleship be king? Will double CV be king? Will a mixture be king? Will people just run around in DDs and murder everything? Who knows? But this is just kind of a discussion about what talents are available to us, kind of a way to think about it and kind of interpret what's the path forward, and then looking at maybe a test build for 2 of the most highly expected carriers that we'll present.